The gunshot cracked through the chapel doors before the preacher could finish saying, "Man and wife," and in that single blast, Marena Holt's world split clean in two. For a long, breathless second, nobody moved. Dust shook from the rafters and drifted down like pale ash. The piano player froze with his hands suspended above the keys. The preacher's mouth hung open mid-syllable. And Marena, 30 years old, trembling in a white dress she had sewn with. Her own calloused fingers felt. Her heartbeat stopped altogether. Then came the second. Sound boots, running, fast. Back door slammed so hard the stained glass window rattled, and a collective gasp rose from the pews. A murmur swept through the room like a sudden desert wind. He's gone. Elias ran. Dear God. Marena didn't need to see him vanish. His absence weighed heavier than any truth spoken aloud. The man she was supposed to marry wasn't just missing, he had fled. Her throat closed. Her bouquet slipped in her grip until crushed petals stained her trembling fingers. She stared at the door as if staring hard enough could drag Elias back through it. Sheriff Rayburn, broad-shouldered and sunburned, stepped forward, trying to calm the growing panic. "Everyone just settle down," he said, though disbelief warbled through his voice. "Elias is. He's probably overwhelmed is all." But no one in that chapel was foolish enough to believe it. Elias's mother, rigid and cold in her stiff blue dress, shot to her feet so abruptly her chair screeched across the floor. Her glare fixed on Marena with venom. "He found out," she hissed. "That's why he ran." Every face turned to Marena's belly. The small curve beneath her dress, barely a few months along, had been concealed with careful stitching and extra fabric. But secrets in a tight western town stuck out like a bullet hole in a white shirt. Whispers erupted. "Instantly, she's expecting. And the child ain't his. I knew there was something off about her. She fooled him. Poor boy." Marena's breath came in shallow, painful bursts. Shame scorched hot up her neck. She wanted to disappear. But instead she forced her chin up, even as her vision blurred. "I didn't fool anyone," she said, each word trembling. "I told him I needed to talk before the ceremony." I tried to explain. "But you didn't," Elias's mother snapped, jutting her chin. "And now look at the mess you've brought to our family." Marena swallowed back the ache that clawed at her throat. She wasn't a liar. She wasn't a schemer. She had truly tried to tell Elias the truth. But he had laughed it off, kissed her forehead, called her nervous and sweet, and told her everything could wait until after the vows. After he owned the ranch. After he owned her. Now everything was ruined. Sheriff Rayburn lifted his hands. "Folks, that's enough. Marena's a respectable woman. Elias leaving her at the altar isn't her doing." But the crowd had already curdled. A tall rancher muttered, "We don't want any trouble-following type in this town." Another nodded. "A woman who arrives alone, carrying secrets? Trouble's already here. And who's the father?" Someone sneered. "Some outlaw?" Marena's heart hammered so hard she felt it in her palms. The walls seemed to shrink inward. They wanted to devour her. "I'll say it myself," she snapped suddenly, voice cracking but loud enough to hush the room. "Yes, I'm pregnant." Shocked silence rolled through the chapel. She forced herself to meet their stares. "And the child's father is dead." The room stayed frozen for a moment, like the words sucked all the air out. The preacher's eyes softened. The sheriff looked weary with pity. But the crowd only stiffened further. Dead father meant unanswered questions. And answered questions meant danger in the Old West. "How convenient," a man muttered. "No proof." "Dead men don't defend reputations," someone else said. A chair scraped at the back of the chapel. A tall figure stood, easily the most striking man in the room. Long black hair brushed his shoulders, shining like a raven's wing beneath the chapel lanterns. His shoulders were broad beneath a weathered buckskin jacket patched with beadwork. Travel dust silvered his boots. His jaw was strong, shadowed with days of stubble. His eyes dark, steady, unreadable, watched the scene with the focus of a lone wolf. He had sat alone since the ceremony began. Not mixing with the townsfolk, simply observing. Now he stepped forward. "That's enough," he said. His voice was calm but carried a steel edge that silenced half the crowd instantly. Elias's uncle bristled. "This ain't your business, Drifter." "You're right," the stranger replied. "It's not. But I won't stand silent while an entire room of people shamus a woman who's already been abandoned." The sheriff blinked. "Sir, no." The man didn't flinch. "You all saw the same thing." A groom crossed the threshold and kept riding. "That's on him, not her." Marena stared in disbelief at the stranger defending her. He didn't know her story, but he stood firm, unfazed by the rising hostility. "Who are you anyway?" Someone snarled. The stranger's eyes flickered with a hint of warning. "My name is Kade Tenaya." A hushed ripple spread across the room. Marena saw the reactions: fear, curiosity, suspicion. She recognized the name too. Kade Tenaya was whispered about in campfire stories. A half Apache, half Mexican drifter. A man who survived ambushes, tracked fugitives, and walked away from things most men couldn't. Some said he saved people. Some said he killed. Most didn't know the truth. The crowd stiffened. Breed. Knew he'd meddle. Might be trouble. Himself. Marena's anger flared like a struck. "Match. He's the only one here who showed me mercy," she shot back. Sheriff Rayburn stepped closer. "Marena, what do you want me to do?" "I can take you back to your room." Her room. A cramped, lonely upstairs rental above the dry goods store. A bed that creaked. A single window cracked at one corner. A place where she cried quietly into her pillow at night because she had nowhere else to go. "I can't stay in this town," she whispered. "Then where will you go?" The sheriff asked gently. She opened her mouth, but no answer came. She'd spent nearly every coin she had trying to start a life here. She owned nothing but her dresses and a few small keepsakes. And now the last piece of hope she had, this marriage, had shattered. A voice spoke softly behind her. "You can ride with me." Marena turned. Kade Tenaya stood calm, expression unreadable. "I'm heading north. The road is rough. You shouldn't be alone in your condition." The room erupted. "You stay away from her. She don't know you. You might be worse than the trouble she's bringing." Marena felt something cold and final settle in her bones. The same people who judged her were the ones trying to chain her here out of fear. She straightened her shoulders. "I'll go with him." The sheriff hesitated. "You sure?" "Yes," Marena said firmly. "I decide my own path from now on." Rayburn dipped his head. "Then I won't stand in your way." Kade nodded once, as if acknowledging her courage. They rode out at sunset. The entire town watched in silence, some with wide eyes, others with disgust curling their lips. The desert wind picked up her veil and ripped it away, sending it tumbling into the dust behind her. She didn't look back. Only, when they reached open desert, did she finally breathe. Kade rode a few paces ahead, scanning the horizon. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "You don't owe me explanations. Not unless you wish to give them." "Thank you," she murmured, "for protecting me." He nodded. People forget kindness costs nothing. Later, in a narrow red canyon where they chose to camp, she studied him as he gathered wood. Strong, calm, disciplined. A man who carried storms behind his eyes. "Why were you at the wedding?" she asked. "Passing through," he replied. Needed water. Saw the chapel open. Figured nobody would notice one more stranger standing at the back. He made them broth. He insisted she rest. He stayed awake long after she slept, but just after midnight, she jerked awake to a distant rumble. Hoofbeats. Kade was already standing, rifle raised, silhouette outlined by moonlight. Stay behind me. Her breath shuddered. Are they after me? Elias, the town? No, he said quietly. They're not your ghosts. Then whose? A voice thundered across the canyon walls. Kade Tenaya. You can't outrun us forever. Marena froze. They weren't after her. They were after him, and she was now caught in the middle of whatever hunted him. Marena's blood went cold at the sound of the man's voice echoing off the canyon walls. The night air trembled with the hoofbeats of half a dozen riders, maybe more closing in fast, each thunderous beat sending vibrations through the packed red earth beneath her bedroll. Kade Tenaya didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even turn his head toward her. He simply stood, rifle lifted, shoulders squared, moonlight catching the hardened line of his jaw. Marena struggled to her feet, one hand instinctively cradling her belly. Kade, who are they? The kind you don't want to meet in the daylight, he said softly. Much less in the dark. The hoofbeats grew louder, echoing through the narrow canyon like drumfire. A second shout came raspier this time, filled with an ugly delight. We know you're down there, Tenaya. Come out like a man. Marena's heart pounded. Are they bounty hunters? No, he answered. Worse. A short, terrible pause. People I used to ride with. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. Kade Tenaya, who had defended her against a room full of judgment, now stood facing enemies from a past he had never once hinted at. What do they want? She whispered. My head, he said plainly. And anything else they can take along the way. A new voice, shrill, mocking, pierced the canyon. We saw the tracks. You ain't alone this time, Kade. Bring the girl out too. Marena's breath hitched. They knew she was here. She tasted fear, metallic and sharp. Kade, stay close to me, he murmured. They won't touch you. Something in his voice, a promise forged from iron, made her believe him. The hoofbeats stopped at the canyon mouth. Silence settled, eerie and suffocating. Marena could hear the shift of saddles, the click of metal against metal, the faint murmur of low voices. Then came a slow clap. Well, the first man drawled. Thought you'd keep running forever, Tenaya. Kade lowered the rifle, a fraction not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. You're far from home, Brant. The name landed with a thud in Marena's chest. Brant. Whoever he was. His voice held the confidence of a man who enjoyed hunting for sport. A shadow stepped forward as moonlight pooled into the canyon. A tall man appeared on horseback, broad, brutal-looking, with a ragged beard and a long scar clawing up his cheek. He held a revolver lazily at his side, as if the night belonged to him. Well now, Brant said, lips curling into a cruel grin. Ain't this a picture? Kade Tenaya playing hero. Kade stepped forward just enough to block Marena from view. You got no business here, he said. Brant cackled. Our business is you, boy. You left us high and dry. You know what that cost us? You caused it yourselves, Kade replied. I walked away. Yeah, Brant said, leaning forward in the saddle, and you took something when you left. Marena felt Kade tense. His grip tightened on the rifle. Brant's grin widened. Where is it, Tenaya? The map. The one we stole together. The one worth a fortune. Marena blinked in confusion. A map? What map? Kade had said nothing about treasure or outlaws or stolen property. You lost that map the moment you started killing innocent people, Kade said coldly. I wasn't letting you use it. Brant spat at the ground. You always were soft. His gaze drifted toward Marena. Brant's eyes gleamed with the sick kind of knowing that made her stomach twist. "And who's the lady?" he asked. "Tenaya pick himself up a bride?" Marena stepped closer to Kade, instinctively swallowing her fear. "I'm no one to you," she said. Brant laughed. "Oh, I like her." "Got fire." "Shame she picked the wrong man to follow." Kade shifted his stance, protective, unyielding. "We're leaving," he said. "You stay out of our way." Brant clicked his tongue. "Sorry, friend. You don't get choices tonight." He signaled the riders behind him. "Surround him." Marena heard the scrape of boots, the soft clink of gun belts. Shadows fanned out along the canyon walls. "Kade?" she breathed. "I know." His voice was terrifyingly steady. "Kade," Brant called. "Hand over the map and we'll let the lady walk." "No harm done." Marena's throat tightened. "You have the map?" she whispered. Kade didn't answer. Brant chuckled. "He didn't tell you? This man's sitting on the biggest treasure trail this side of the Sierra Madres. Riches enough to bury a town." The crack in Kade's calm was tiny, but she saw it. A flicker. "A wound. Kade," she said softly. "Is any of it true?" He answered without taking his eyes off the outlaws. "Yes, I stole the map back from them. Because they planned to kill everyone in a hidden settlement to get what they wanted." Brant growled. "Those settlers were hiding gold that ain't theirs." "And your hands have taken enough lives," Kade shot back. The canyon went dead silent. Brant lifted his revolver. "I'm counting to 3. Bring me that map." Marena grabbed Kade's arm. "We can't fight them." "I won't let them touch you," he whispered. 1. Brant shouted. Kade's jaw clenched. 2. Marena felt every second slam into her chest like a fist. Gunshots split the night, but it didn't come from Brant. One of Brant's men jerked backward and fell off his horse with a scream. Sheriff Rayburn's voice boomed across the ridge above. "Drop your guns." Marena gasped. The sheriff stood high on the canyon rim with a shotgun aimed down at Brant's men. Behind him were 2 deputies, rifles ready. "How did he?" she stammered. Kade exhaled slowly. "He followed us." Brant snarled. "This ain't your business, Sheriff." "Any man threatening a woman in my county makes it my business," Rayburn barked. "Now lay down those weapons, or I'll lay you down myself." Brant's men looked shaken, unsure. Brant's face twisted into a snarl. "This ain't over, Tenaya." He fired 2 shots not at Kade, but toward the ridge, and chaos erupted. Riders wheeled their horses. Dust exploded. Gunfire ricocheted off the canyon walls. Sheriff Rayburn ducked behind a boulder. "Go!" he shouted. "Get her out of here." Kade grabbed Marena's hand. "Move!" He pulled her behind a rock as bullets screamed past. The horses screamed. Outlaws yelled curses. The moonlit canyon became a blur of smoke and fury. "Kade!" Marena gasped as he shielded her from a spray of falling stone. "We're trapped." "Not yet." He pulled her toward the horses. "Stay close." A stray bullet grazed Kade's shoulder. He staggered but didn't fall. "Kade?" she cried, reaching for him. "I'm fine, keep moving." They reached the roan mare. Kade hoisted her onto the saddle with urgent strength. "Kade, please, you're bleeding. Hold the reins." He slapped the horse's flank and the mare bolted forward, tearing out of the canyon. Marena twisted in the saddle just in time to see Kade grab his own horse and vault onto its back. Shots rang behind them. The sheriff shouted orders. Brant screamed for his men to chase them, and Kade and Marena exploded out into the desert like fleeing shadows. The wind tore tears from her eyes. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst. Her dress snapped wildly behind her. "Kade!" she called over the thunder of hooves. "Where are we going?" Anywhere but here. The desert rolled out before them, endless, moonlit, wild. Will the sheriff be all right? She shouted. He knew what he was doing, Kade yelled back. He came for us. A pang hit her chest. Sheriff Rayburn Kind, steadfast, had risked his life to protect them. Kade. She cried again, voice cracking. What did Brant mean? What map do you have? He slowed only when the canyon vanished behind a distant ridge. His silhouette cut sharp against the moonlight as he turned his head toward her. It's not just a map, he said. It's the last hope of a settlement hidden deep in the Sierra. A place untouched by outlaws. A place with families, children, people who trusted me to protect their home. Her breath hitched. And Brant wants what they have. Yes, Kade said. Gold they mined honestly. Gold the world doesn't know exists. And if Brant gets his hands on that map, he'll kill every last one of them. She stared at him, horrified. Kade? Why are you carrying something so dangerous alone? His voice was low, raw. Because I have nothing left to lose. The words hit her like a stone. He turned forward again, urging the horses into a steady run through the silver desert. And now, he said after a long, heavy pause, you're caught in the middle of it. Marena clutched her reins tight, heart pounding. No, she whispered. I chose to ride with you. Whatever comes, I won't turn back. He didn't answer, but tension eased from his shoulders. The night wind curled gently around them, whispering through the sagebrush as they rode deeper into the unknown. Behind them, Brant and his outlaws were regrouping. Ahead of them lay danger, secrets, and a settlement counting on Kade's courage, and Marena was beginning to realize her fate was tied to his in ways she never could have predicted. The moment Marena stepped inside the abandoned line cabin, the air felt different, too still, too breathless, as if the walls were waiting for something to happen. Kade nudged the door shut behind them, sweeping his long black hair over his shoulder as he set the lantern on the table. Its golden glow pushed back the shadows, lighting the dust motes swirling like restless spirits. Sit, he said gently. You need rest. Your body's had too much terror for one night. Marena lowered herself onto the small cot, hands trembling despite her attempts to steady them. She watched Kade check the windows, the cracks in the log walls, and the doors bolt. His every movement was purposeful, controlled, but she felt the tension simmering beneath his calm. Whoever had shadowed them in the canyon, Kade wasn't dismissing it, not for a second. Finally, he dragged a chair toward the door, flipped it backward, and straddled it, arms crossed over the backrest, eyes on the dark outside. You think he followed us, she whispered. Kade didn't lie. Yes. A chill rippled up her spine that had nothing to do with the night air. Are you sure it was Elias? She asked. It could have been. It was him, Kade said softly. A man running from guilt moves different, desperate, wild. He's like a wolf that knows it's dying, but wants to bite one last time. Marena swallowed. Why would he do this? Why follow us across the desert in the middle of the night? Kade's jaw tightened. Because he's afraid you'll speak the truth. She curled fingers in her lap. Truth about what? Kade didn't answer immediately. He watched the desert through the cracks in the cabin wall, his expression shadowed. When I found those horses spooked, he said finally, one trail led toward the canyon. Someone wanted you out there alone. Marena's stomach dropped. You think Elias meant to harm me? Kade didn't say the word. He didn't have to. She looked at her trembling hands. A few days ago, she had been preparing to marry Elias Mercer, nervous, hopeful, trying to ignore the unease she always felt around him, but telling herself it was normal. Now she was hiding in a cabin with a man she barely knew, the one person who had defended her when the entire town turned its back. Everything felt upside down. The silence stretched until Marena couldn't bear it. Kade, If Elias is dangerous, if he wants to silence me, I think I should tell you the truth before he gets the chance. Kade's gaze left the window. Only if you're ready. Marena's throat tightened. She had carried her shame and fear alone for months, but under Kade's steady gaze she found courage she didn't know she had. My child. Isn't Elias's, she whispered. He knows it. That's why he left. Kade didn't flinch. Whose is it? Marena breathed in shakily. A man who passed through our town, a trapper named Rowan Pierce. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't dishonest. He was lonely. So was I. Her voice trembled. He left after a few days. I found out I was with child after he was long gone. She wiped her eyes. When I told Elias, he said he'd marry me anyway to save my reputation, he said. I didn't realize I was offering him a lifetime to hold over my head. Kade's voice dropped low. Men like him don't offer help without a chain attached. She nodded miserably. When he announced he was calling off the wedding, I thought that was the worst he could do to me. But this... Her breath trembled. Why follow us? Why chase me down like prey? Kade didn't hesitate. Because he's losing control of the story. And men like Elias survive on stories they spin. Marena shuddered. Elias had always been charming, too charming. And his mother, Mrs. Mercer, wielded her reputation like a sword. Together they shaped opinions, whispered rumors, controlled the narrative. If Elias feared Marena might expose his cruelty, he would do anything to stop her. Kade rose suddenly, crossing the room. He kneeled in front of her, his large hands warm on her cold ones. You're safe with me, he said quietly. The fire in his dark eyes made her breath catch. It wasn't romance, at least not yet, but it was fierce, protective, unwavering. Something she hadn't felt from anyone in years. Before Marena could respond, Kade froze. A twig snapped outside. Marena's breath hitched. Kade extinguished the lantern instantly. Darkness swallowed the cabin, leaving only the faint outline of his body in front of her. She heard the whisper of Steele, his knife sliding free from its sheath. Kade? She whispered. He didn't answer. Another sound as slow. Deliberate step on dry dirt. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. A low voice drifted through the door. Marena. Her blood turned to ice. Elias. Kade didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even breathe. The cabin door creaked as if someone leaned against it. Marena. I ain't here to hurt you, Elias called, his voice oily and trembling at the same time. I just want to talk. Kade stepped silently toward the door like a predator, knife ready. Marena grabbed his arm before she realized she'd moved. Kade stopped instantly, glancing back at her through the darkness. She shook her head once, pleading, terrified. She didn't want blood spilled because of her. He placed his hand gently over hers, then pressed a finger to his lips. Marena, Elias called again, louder now. I know you're inside. You think hiding with that mongrel's gonna protect you? You think he cares what happens to you or that bastard child? Marena flinched as if slapped. Kade's shoulders tensed, rage rolling off him like heat from a wildfire. I just want to talk, Elias repeated. You owe me that. Kade's voice was a low whisper against her ear. You owe him nothing. Another step outside, then the faint rustle of boots shifting in sand. Marena. Elias said softly now, coaxing, manipulative. Come out. Before he hurts you. Marena's breath caught. Kade didn't wait. In one swift movement, he swung the door open and slammed Elias back into the dirt. The two men rolled in a tangle of limbs, the moonlight glinting off the knife in Kade's hand. Kade! Marena cried. Elias scrambled away, coughing, face pale. You savage! You tried to kill me. You came stalking a woman in the night, Kade hissed. Be grateful I didn't. Marena hurried between them, hands raised. Stop, both of you. Kade froze immediately. Elias did not. You're choosing him? Elias spat, eyes wild. After everything I've done for you? You abandoned me at the altar, Marena said, voice trembling. You dragged my name through the dirt. You stalked me through the desert in the dark. You could have killed me. Elias's expression twisted into something crueler. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? My mother's already told half the town you ran off with this. This stray. Kade stepped forward. Choose your next words wisely. Elias's gaze flicked between them. Then an ugly smile crawled across his face. You want the truth, Marena? I left you because you're a liar. And I followed you tonight because you're going to fix that. Marena stiffened. Fix what? My reputation. Kade moved like lightning, grabbing Elias by the collar. You're done talking. Elias's voice dropped, low and venomous. You'll regret this, Marena. Both of you. Kade shoved him back, but Elias didn't flee. He simply backed into the shadows, his grin never fading. You think this ends tonight? Elias whispered. My mother will ruin you. The sheriff will drag him in irons. And you? He looked at Marena. You'll be begging me to take you back. Then he turned and vanished into the desert. Marena collapsed onto the steps, shaking violently. Kade knelt beside her. He won't touch you, he said softly. Not while I breathe. But the desert wind carried Elias's last words back to them like a curse. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. The sun had barely crested the horizon when the bell over Hollow Creek began to clang sharp, frantic, cutting through the cold dawn like a warning. Marena jerked awake where she'd fallen asleep sitting upright against the cabin wall. Kade was already on his feet, hand on the knife at his belt, scanning the world outside through the cracks in the wooden boards. What is it? She whispered. Kade's dark eyes narrowed. It's the town bell. Only rings for trouble. Or blood. Marena's stomach tightened. She pushed herself to stand, wincing slightly at the soreness in her back. Do you think it's Elias? He ran back to town to stir the hornet's nest, Kade said. His jaw flexed. And I reckon it's about to strike. Marena swallowed hard. We should go. He turned to her, expression softening. There's still time to run the other way. Running won't clear my name, she said quietly. You saved me, but I can't hide forever. Elias and his mother will poison everything unless I face this. Kade held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. They saddled the horses as the desert warmed with morning gold. The air smelled like dust and heat and something electric, something coming. As they started toward town, Hollow Creek lay ahead like a stain against the pale earth. Smoke curling from chimneys, clusters of townsfolk gathering in front of the sheriff's office and waiting at the center. Like a snake coiled around a rabbit was Elias Mercer. Beside him stood Sheriff Rayburn, stern-faced but unsure, and Mrs. Mercer with her black shawl wrapped like mourning cloth, even though nothing had been lost except her sense of control. When Kade and Marena approached, the crowd parted slowly, murmurs slicing through the air. There she is, running with that drifter. Heard she tried to stab Elias. No wonder he left her. Each whisper stung like a thorn. But Marena kept her spine straight. Sheriff Rayburn raised a hand. Marena Holt, Kade Tenaya. Step forward. Kade rode ahead of her, protective as always, dismounting first. He offered her a hand down. She accepted it, grounding herself in the warmth of his touch. Elias stepped forward, arms folded, wearing a deep bruise on his jaw where Kade had struck him the night before. Well, he drawled coldly. Look who finally crawled back. Marena felt Kade tense beside her. Sheriff, Elias continued, I came last night asking for help. They attacked me. Kade tried to kill me. Marena lured me out there with lies, and that's enough. Marina's voice cracked across the courtyard louder than she expected. The crowd fell silent. Elias blinked. Enough? Yes, she said, stepping forward. You've spun lies long enough. He stiffened, rage starting to flicker around the edges. She lifted her chin. You left me at the altar. You humiliated me. Then you followed me into the desert in the middle of the night armed. I wasn't armed. Kade pulled something from his saddlebag and tossed it. Into the dust between them, Elias's hunting knife. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marena continued, voice steadying. I begged you to stop. You didn't come to talk. You came to silence me. That's a lie. Elias snarled, but now people were glancing at each other, doubt creeping in. Sheriff Rayburn frowned. Elias, you told me she ambushed you. Kade took a step forward, voice quiet but iron strong. He stalked her. I heard him outside the cabin. When I opened the door, he lunged for the knife in his boot. That's not true. Elias protested. But Marena had watched enough lies to recognize when a man was slipping. Says the man who ran away on his own wedding day. Someone muttered from the crowd. Another voice. Didn't he owe her an explanation? Mrs. Mercer snapped around. You will not speak to my son that way. But it was already shifting. Marena turned to face the crowd fully. You want the truth? Here it is. She took a breath, her hand subconsciously resting on her stomach. My child is not Elias's. I never claimed it was. I told him the truth before he proposed, and he said he'd marry me anyway. Her voice softened, steady but heavy with months of pain. But the moment he realized people might question him, might whisper, he turned on me. He made me feel ashamed of something that was never shameful life. The townsfolk murmured again, but no one jeered now. Some even nodded. Sheriff Rayburn scratched his beard, uncertain. Elias, is that true? Did you know she was pregnant before you proposed? Elias hesitated. Just 1 second, but it was enough. He's lying. A woman muttered. Always thought he was too slick. Another whispered. Mrs. Mercer stepped forward, face pinched. Sheriff, my son is the victim here. That half-breed. Kade's eyes darkened, but before he could speak, Marena's voice cut like a whip. Say it, she said coldly. Say the word you've whispered for years. The word you used to describe Kade when he was just a boy working your father's stables. The word you used to describe me when I was a poor girl trying to earn a living. Mrs. Mercer's mouth snapped shut. You raised your son to believe he was untouchable, and now he thinks he can destroy me because of it. Kade stepped beside her, his presence steady and grounding. Elias lunged suddenly toward Marena. You ruined me. Kade intercepted him in an instant, pinning him to the ground, holding him still as the crowd gasped. Sheriff Rayburn drew his pistol. That's enough. Elias Mercer, get up. Hands where I can see him. Elias hesitated, glaring daggers at Kade, but slowly raised his hands. Rayburn looked between them. Elias, until we sort this out, I'm detaining you for threatening Miss Holt. Mrs. Mercer shrieked, but even she could see the tide had turned. People stepped back from her, no longer eager to defend the Mercer name. Elias finally broke, voice shaking with hatred. You think this fixes anything? You think anyone's going to want you now? You think that Drifter's gonna stay? Marena felt a sting, an old wound he knew exactly how to press. But Kade turned him sharply toward the sheriff. You don't get to speak to her again. Rayburn marched Elias toward the office while Mrs. Mercer sputtered curses behind them. When they were gone, the crowd began to disperse. A few women approached Marena hesitantly. Wish you'd told us sooner. You didn't deserve what he did. I'm sorry. Marena. She nodded, unable to speak, tears burning at the edges of her eyes. When the last of the townsfolk drifted away, Marena finally let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for months. Kade stood beside her, Silent, waiting, she turned to him. Why didn't you walk away? After everything, why stay? Kade looked at her with those deep, unreadable eyes, the wind teasing strands of his black hair across his face. I know what it's like to be cornered by lies, he said softly. To have the world decide what you are before you even speak. His voice dropped lower. I wasn't going to let that happen to you. Marena felt a warmth rise in her chest, not romantic at first, but grateful, humbled, fierce. She stepped closer. What happens now? He shrugged a little. Sheriff said Elias could get a few months. Maybe a fine. But he won't bother you again. Not after the whole town heard the truth. And us? She asked before she could stop herself. Kade blinked slowly. Us? She looked down at her stomach, then back up at him. I don't know what to call it. But you stood by me when no one else did. You risked your life for me. Kade took a step closer. I don't want thanks. I know, she whispered. That's why I trust you. The desert wind lifted a strand of her hair, brushing it across his cheek. For a heartbeat, they simply breathed the same air, the same relief, the same escape from fear. Marena, he murmured. I ain't a man with a place. I drift. That's what I've always done. She nodded. But you're welcome in mine. As long as you choose to stay. Kade held her gaze for a long waited moment, then slowly. Quietly he reached out and took her hand. Not ownership, not pity. Choice. You gave me a reason to stop running. He said. She felt tears slip down her cheeks. Then, stay, she whispered. And under the rising sun, in a town that had once turned its back on her, Marena Holt stood beside the man who had defended her, believed her, and given her the strength to reclaim her life. Their story wasn't born of perfection. It was born of truth. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't frighten her. It felt like a beginning.